first and foremost. You were born in New York.
Yeah, I was born
You consider yourself Puerto Rican?
I consider, because, like, when I lived in New York, I used to always say I'm a New Yorican.
Oh, yeah, I read that term.
Yeah, we do. I'm New Yorican.
New Yorican.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's it, and stuff like that. But, I don't know, just living here, it's very different here because everybody thinks you're Mexican. Every Spanish person.
That's Kentucky. Your surroundings right now.
Yeah, because
People didn't do that in New York.
In this town, I think I've met one other Puerto Rican person.
How was your life growing up in Queens? As a kid, you probably ran around the streets and everything like that, and
well, I was just like a normal kid.
You didn't feel
any
different.
It would be 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'd just be hanging outside, and not thinking nothing of it, just hanging out. My grandmother, I found out I can buy beer at a young age. When I was 11 years old, my grandma was like, "Go to the store and buy me beer. Can you do it?" I was like, "I'll try." So I went down the street and I got a big 40 ounce for her.
This is your grandmother who doesn't speak English.
Yeah, this is my grandmother doesn't speak English.
So did you find yourself in that situation a lot, like where you're the person who's you're the one that speaks English for your parents and your grandparents?
Yeah, it happens. Well, it didn't happen in New York because everybody who I was around was
Spanish.
Yeah, I was around no white people at all until I moved.
Even in school? How was school as a Puerto Rican kid?
In school,
is it mixed?
It was very mixed. Excuse me. It was very mixed. You'd see maybe just a handful of white people, just a handful.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very mixed. Colombians, Dominicans. I got along with everybody. Really,
Did you feel anything about the fact that you spoke a lot of Spanish, but you were learning to read and write in English at school? Did that cross your mind ever? Is like, why is this going on?
What I was learning?
The fact that you spoke Spanish, but yet you weren't studying that in school. You were studying English.
Well, it was,
Did you ever wonder why?
No, it really didn't bother me because I was around other Spanish kids who spoke English,
Yeah.
And then they would speak, or some would speak, Spanish and English together, and it was just, it didn't,
It just felt
it
natural.
just felt natural, It just felt natural, just to speak, they spoke that way, I spoke my way. It was just.
But you never wondered why your teachers weren't speaking to you in Spanish, or why you weren't learning that or studying in school
from other Hispanic communities in the United States, like Mexicans and Dominican Republicans. Do you think that you have different cultural traditions?
I think so.
Is your Spanish different?
Yeah, Spanish is different, and even like with Mexicans and Puerto Ricans, like Mexicans, a big thing, like in New York, like I was saying about the Mexicans, they're overpopulated over there. A lot of them are moving to Spanish Harlem.
Yeah.
Like they're starting to sell a corn on the cob with mayonnaise on it. That's Mexican.
It's a Mexican tradition.
Yeah, like that's a food from Mexico. You never see Puerto Ricans eating,
Really?
Putting corn on a whole corn on a cob, put mayonnaise. I never heard that.
Right.
That's just a Mexican thing.
Yeah. So you all sort of begin to share sort of traditions. Do you think that they take any Puerto Rican traditions and use them?
The thing is, like in New York, it's a big deal when being compared like the Puerto Rican compared to Dominicans. It all boils down to the fact that yeah, Dominican Republic, Colombia, and Mexicans and Puerto Ricans and everybody. We're all Spanish, but we're all thinking we're better.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just how it is.
How do you think the Spanish language is different? Like speaking-wise, I know the Mexicans, they're known to have more of that rhythmic Spanish, and of course the Spanish people from Spain have that lisp. So how does Puerto Rican Spanish?
Well, they'll speak like half Spanish and half English in their sentences.
Right.
Stuff like that.
And that's very common, right?
Yeah.
Everybody does that.
Yeah, everybody does that.
Do you think that when people go back to Puerto Rico, maybe who have been in New York, like, do they get discriminated against from people on the islands? Why are you talking English?
From what I've heard, they automatically know, like, oh yeah, you from New York,
Oh, really?
The way,
Really?
When you're in Puerto Rico, everybody speaks Spanish. They don't break it down, like half English. That's just happened in New York, just being, you have young kids talking, just basically English, just being around other people who spoke it, and then being their family spoke just Spanish.
Felt any
so basically used both
discrimination either from like white people or from black people or from other Puerto Ricans in other ways?
They said beat up everyone who was Spanish. They surrounded the whole basketball court. There was about 60 of them lined up, and they just rushed whoever was Spanish in the park. And I got punched. Once I got punched once, I just left because there was too many. I couldn't do nothing. But I had a friend who got stabbed and hit over the head with a bottle and stuff like that.
And that was Spanish people, it was like mixed Spanish descent, or mainly Mexican, mainly Puerto Rican?
No, I'm thinking mostly, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Colombian.
Oh, really?
'Cause around my area, what I lived in Queens,
Yeah.
it was just mostly Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Colombians. I mean, Mexicans.
A lot of people
I didn't see no
from
Mexicans
Puerto
at
Rico,
all.
Dominican Republic, Colombia, and Ecuador, you name it. When they come to New York and they can't really, they don't have family, they look towards a gang for family, for support. To
Puerto
know,
Ricans culturally,
stuff
they
like
sort
that.
of hang around, like outside of, they don't stay inside like us Americans do. They don't stay in their houses, so they'll go out and they'll hang out like even on the streets and play cards and stuff. And I noticed that even when I was in Spain, people did it all the time.
In my old neighborhood, we hung out.
They live outside,
Yeah,
basically.
I hang out outside all day. We played the fire hydrant pump. We get a can, cut 2 holes out of each side, and we just hang out in the summertime. Hang out in the streets. Just hang out on the streets and just wet each other. We just hang out there all day long. And then there'd be people, playing cards or dominoes on the side.
What if you ran into like your typical white person or somebody who was not, not in your neighborhood or not of Spanish descent? They think that it was kind of strange.
Yeah, I didn't see. Yeah, I didn't.
You didn't see a lot of that?
No, I didn't see really white people in my neighborhood too much.
Really?
The Mormons, they would come like 6 or 7 deep in the neighborhoods and dressing all, tie, and they were white.
Yeah.
They would knock on the doors and everybody would be quiet and
Really?
run away.
That's awesome.
Just so they wouldn't talk to them.
They keep
never
the
got
cultural
messed
life
with,
through things like food and dance and like
Yeah,
I
I
said,
think so.
do they have Puerto Rican celebrations that
Yeah,
are
they have,
specific to?
They have the Puerto Rican Day Parade, which is in New York
Okay.
every July. It's in the beginning of July, the end of June. I forgot. I haven't been in so long. But it's a Puerto Rican Day Parade where
Puerto
they
Rican
shut
Day
down
Parade.
a whole bunch of streets and then people just.
Where's that? Is that in the Bronx?
It's in Manhattan.
It's in Manhattan?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
in
cool.
Manhattan. Yeah. And they shut the streets down and they just people with flags just running around blowing whistles.
Of all that,
No.
whoever?
Well, you have some Dominicans and Colombians going there just to hang out, just probably see the girls or something like that. But you have mostly Puerto Ricans there.
Cool.
Just basically, and then the parade is mostly about salsa music and hip hop Spanish music.
I've heard a lot about hip hop in Puerto Rico.
And a lot of reggaeton artists. Reggaeton is just like a mix of reggae and Spanish and rap all together. They call it reggaeton. And the parade it shows a lot of the culture of the old costumes that they would wear.
How do you keep your
just
culture
different
alive?
things. Well,
Yeah.
but my family, they just they're all about just being together and remembering and having just remembering the past and the older family members. Like my grandfather, he's buried in Brooklyn, and we'd always used to on his birthday we'd go to his grave and we'd set a boombox right on top of his tombstone and we'd bring beer and pour beer right on his grave and just set up a picnic right on his grave and just sit there and just eat Spanish food and just hang out, dance, just basically feeling like, hey, he's still here, we're just having a good time.
Yeah, that's so neat.
Yeah.
And so how do you think, like now you live in Kentucky and you're with a big family here and everything like that and you have your own family. So we have Easter, today's Easter, whatever, like we have our celebrations, birthdays, Easter, Christmas, all that stuff. How do you think Puerto Ricans in New York, for example, in the barrios, how do
We
they
get
do
together
that
with our
differently?
families,
Is it the
a
same or is it different?
A little mellow out, just a little more chill and, no alcohol really. Little music playing, but not, the same.
Not a lot of dancing,
Yeah. Like
for
with
example.
like with my family, it's more like just loud salsa music and, food. Everybody's up, standing up, eating. No one's sitting down at the table together. Everyone's standing somewhere eating on the dance floor, trying to dance while they eat or with a drink in their hand or, screaming loud and running through the house.
I did read about it, that Puerto Ricans
Yeah.
felt like they were discriminated against more so than other Hispanic people. Do you think that that's true? Have you ever felt
Maybe,
that?
Yeah, well, just living here, I felt that, not in New York.
Not in New York,
No,
though.
not in New York. I mean, when I was in New York and no one ever was like, hey, you're Dominican. No one, everybody, if I would meet a stranger, they would automatically know I was Puerto Rican.
They would.
It was weird. They just knew. They was like, I could tell you Puerto Rican.
Do you think the Spanish is different? Is it faster than Mexican Spanish?
I would say yeah, then no. It just depends on the person, really.
It just depends on the person, you
Yeah,
think?
that's what I think.
I've heard that S's and stuff, like you might say gracia, or
That's just-
sometimes S's are left off, like it's shortened.
You mean Puerto Ricans? Yeah. I mean, yeah. They that's what it is. They just, they cut corners and then they start speaking English and have Spanish.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know. It's almost like.
You speak Spanish and English with your family.
Yeah, when I'm around my family, I'll talk Spanish and English. I'll do it and not really realize I'm doing it. It'll just come out. But when I'm around, like I want to say white people, or people who are not Spanish, and they'll say, hey, let's talk Spanish, and it's weird because it's hard to do because it's like it's not, it doesn't.
Exactly. No, I completely understand that.
Yeah.
The context, it's all about context and
It's just
how
like,
you're thinking.
When someone puts me on the spot, like,
'Cause-
how do you say this? I'm just like, well, but when I'm around my family and we're just all talking, I'm just blurting stuff out, not even knowing.
Yeah.
It just comes back because, my grandmother, she only spoke Spanish.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean there. Do you miss speaking English at all? I mean Spanish. Do you miss speaking Spanish at all?
Yeah, I do. I think.
Do
yeah,
you read and write in Spanish?
No, I don't.
Not at all. So you're, in a way, you're illiterate,
Yeah.
but you speak.
Yeah, I mean, growing up is like my father and my mother. They would always say, you have to learn Spanish. It's part of your culture.
Right.
I mean, when you're young, you like coach. I don't care about coach.
Yeah,
You're just like,
exactly.
I just
That's
want to
true.
hang out on the street.
But now that you're a father,
Yeah, but now that I'm older,
how do you
I'm
feel about
I'm more
Xavier
interested.
learning Spanish?
Yeah, I try to teach him. I make him call me papi, and I try to teach him.
I think it's in that case, then I guess I could say, how do you feel, even in your lifetime, how the Puerto Rican situation has progressed? Has it changed at all, as far as the way people see you?
Well, I mean, like you were saying, you read about the '70s. I mean, I've heard like my older parents. I mean, my older family members say stuff like, back in the days, it was kind of hard for us. Everybody, just discriminating us because we weren't black, we weren't white, we were Spanish.
Yeah.
But then a lot of them moved toward in Harlem, Spanish Harlem, and they made their own home, and they were comfortable with it.
So you personally haven't felt that.
No.
That's good.
Growing up.
That means that things have.
Well, while I was alive, living in New York and going to my aunt's house in Spanish Harlem, and going to my father's house in the Bronx, I didn't feel there's no discrimination because I went to those areas and there was just nothing but Puerto Ricans there, and I felt at home.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to keep your.
I'll be walking around. You walk through the neighborhoods, you'd see Puerto Rican flags, just sticking out of the apartments, just hanging out of the apartment windows, just sitting there, and then you see graffiti and Puerto Rican flags all over the walls, and that was just natural,
Yeah.
It felt natural to me,
You felt, yeah.
Yeah,
You
felt
felt
at
very
home.
Puerto Rican
Yeah,
at that time
you
too, I'm
felt,
sure.
Yeah, you feel good, I mean, even like the Puerto Rican Day Parade. I mean, when you're there and then you're hollering out, you're waving your flag. You just, I don't know. It's a certain feeling. You just feel pride. That's the Puerto Rican Day Parade. It's all about pride.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you doing the interview. I mean, I think that's great.